Hi, John. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you too, mate.
Yeah. So, what's been happening in the industry?
Well, it's been an interesting time, hasn't it? Everyone talks about the pandemic like it's been here forever, but it's only March last year that the whole world changed, and it's changed. I feel like it's changed 5 or 6 times since.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but from our point of view, what we see, the property industry has been up and down over that time, but it's proven itself to be very resilient. March, April, when the pandemic really hit, we definitely saw a bit of a slowdown. But then on a state by state basis, that really changed. The
Yeah.
second lockdown I remember we saw in Victoria, the market didn't drop down 20 or 30%, it was more like 10.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of been in, every time we get into a lockdown in any state, things do slow down, but only marginally.
Mm.
And so, if you're looking at property, I think we've seen sort of 5 years worth of technology evolution over the last 12 months.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and lawyers and conveyancers who perhaps didn't want to use electronic signatures or electronic VOI or even electronically sign contracts,
Yeah.
uh, they're now doing that as part of their day-to-day business. And it used to be even my local lawyer. If I want to speak to him, he'd always say, "Just come in, John." And every interaction I had, whether it be KYC interactions or just speaking to Wendy in there, who really runs the place, would all be face to face. Hey, come in, and even payment was all face to face. And
Yeah.
now that it's entirely digital. So when I meet, it's on a Zoom call, and all of our interactions are electronic. And isn't that amazing that the whole industry, the legal industry especially, has moved and adapted so quickly over the last 6 to 12 months?
It's actually interesting because I was thinking about this recently, and you remember the sort of, I mean, unfortunately, we both through a change of GST when everything sort of switched over in 2000 into GST, and accounts were sort of forced to go and adopt more electronic ways of doing things. It's almost like the pandemic's had this kind of effect in terms of digitization of legal practices in that sort of similar way.
Yeah, it has. I mean, that's the funny thing about us. We worked together during
Yeah,
during
we
that
did.
time, and we saw that evolution. There's the usual lead up to it. Oh, gosh, what's going to happen? Will we be able to adapt? Will the systems all fall down? It felt like Y2K. And then, but the industry had really adopted GST and adjusted very, very quickly. The difference between that, I guess, and the pandemic is we didn't have the real lead up. You
Yeah.
know, we didn't see it coming. We probably should have it, but the industry still adapted exceptionally fast, and it's been quite impressive to see actually.
It's interesting because you look at practitioners, and I guess the technology literacy of practitioners before the pandemic versus now. I mean, how do you think that's? I mean, obviously it's changed, but how do you think it was before, and how do you think these guys have gone from where they were before to now?
Yeah, I think it's a popular misconception that the legal and conveyancing industry was technically illiterate.
Yeah.
They were literate, but they perhaps weren't embracing the technology. So they would use electronic VOI by exception. I've got a
Mm.
client who's overseas. We've got to get this transaction done now. Let's use that electronic stuff. That's how it was used. And I think what's happened now is, that they're now using it every day and for just about every transaction.
Yeah.
And I think it's more, they've really developed that muscle memory now to technology is very much part of our business, and it's
Yeah.
part of every single interaction. And ultimately, what that's yielding is they're getting better and better at using the technology to deliver a better service for their clients. And the legal industry has always been a service industry. What really differentiates one lawyer or a conveyancer from another is the service that they
Yeah.
give you. And I think a lot of our clients have figured out that these newer technologies now enable them to provide a better service than they did before, a more convenient service for their clients, and a more transparent service.
Yeah.
I think, in the days where I used to have to call my lawyer up and go in and see my lawyer to find out where my property transaction was, or any transaction, those days now can be replaced with a more transparent experience where, because I'm engaging with them digitally, I'm
Yeah.
digitally aware where the process is with them. So, I can see I've requested a contract. Yep. Okay. The contract's been fulfilled now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I can see when the exchange has occurred in real time, and I'm not waiting for phone calls or having to call my lawyer to chase them up. I'm getting that information real time. I can see my settlement scheduled in. I can see, the booking time has changed. And I can see, to the minute when it's settled. That transparency, I think, is really critically important. And it's not just property transactions either. It's family law, wills, estate, and probate. It's a more digital and transparent experience.
You think it actually means that typically with a law firm, you've got matters that come in, they work on the matters, they finish the matters, but the challenge is actually getting those clients to be repeat clients and actually do other work on other matters, and I guess build a ongoing sort of stream of revenue.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a digital world enables them to do that far better than our previous world. Some firms are really interested in that. I know when I bought my first house, my lawyer was straight at me for a will. Let's do a will. And I'm a firm believer. Especially in the property sector, I like the idea of using a local lawyer or conveyancer. They're the ones that know, when you're buying a house, they'll tell you the sort of history of the property and what's going on in the area, and where there was a garbage tip 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
and where, that local knowledge is critical. And I also like it because whenever I go out for a coffee to the local shops, if I see my lawyer there, he'll remind me that my will needs updating. Uh,
Of
and
course.
that's business development, but I think I don't see the industry doing it enough.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, the conversations have changed with professionals lately. And my lawyer, instead of talking about my will now, if we're having a coffee together, we'll be talking about other more interesting things that are affecting society right now. And we'll talk about how COVID's affecting the workplace. And I think the legal industry has an opportunity to get on the front foot to
Yeah.
help companies navigate this mid-pandemic world.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of questions that are being thrown up now about particularly workplaces, vaccinations, potential for ongoing restrictions or those coming off. But it's a funny world because you've got all these other sorts of bits of technology weaving in as well. I mean, you've got issues around privacy and cybersecurity, and there's all these things, all these issues that you go to yourself, where can I get that guidance from for a business sort of legal regulation compliance standpoint? Like, where do I get the leadership from?
Yeah, and that's the thing that puzzles me sometimes, why people don't realize that the lawyers are the place to go. When the pandemic hit last year, everybody was talking about lockdowns, stand downs, furloughs.
Yeah.
Am I going to be able to survive?
Yeah.
But they didn't make the next logical step, which is I need to call my lawyer and find out what I can do, what I can't do. And there was so much misinformation out there. I can tell you at InfoTrack, the first thing when we were trying to navigate the pandemic and understand, what does furlough mean? What does stand down mean? What does JobKeeper mean? That we reached straight out to our law firm
Yeah.
and said, we need to speak to an employment lawyer. We need to understand our situation. We need to gain advice. What should we do? How do we protect our people? How do we protect our business? And we got the answers. And I think large companies like InfoTrack will do that. What worries me is that the smaller companies don't tend to naturally do that.
No. It's interesting. What sort of SMEs, talking from my own standpoint as a sort of small business, I mean, you think to yourself, the first port of call from a business standpoint is your accountant. But in
Yeah.
actual fact, it should be your lawyer.
That's right. And, I found, I'll tell you a funny story, David. So like everybody in Australia, we're all looking at property right now. I was looking at a property, and this real estate agent, I've got to know this real estate agent. He's a friend of a friend. And he approached me and he said, listen, you're in the legal industry. Can I ask you? He said, my employer's talking to us about, if we're not vaccinated, we can't work there.
Mhm.
And first thing I pointed out to him is I may work in the legal industry, but I've got a technology background.
Yeah,
I'm not a
absolutely.
lawyer. I'm certainly not going to be giving you any advice. But he mentioned an article, and he said, I saw in the Australian Financial Review that Gilbert and Tobin is a
Mm,
law firm, and they've told their people, if you haven't got a jab, you can't go to work. And I
yeah,
said to him, well, actually, if you read that article, it doesn't say no jab, no job. It says no jab, no go to the office. Um,
yeah, that's right.
that's a very different thing. Oh, but what about Qantas? Qantas came out and said no jab, no job. And so here is this, small business effectively. They're trying to figure out what they can do in their industry
Yeah,
because they see potential purchases all day long. They have high contact with people, and they're trying to figure out, well, what do we need to put in place to protect our people and our clients and our business? And
yeah.
the answer is go and speak to a lawyer, because every business is different.
Mhm.
Every single business is different, and it's only going to be a law firm that can take the time to understand the business and then advise you on, well, here's what you can do for your people, here's what you can do to protect your clients. And not just on COVID, on everything. Can I electronically sign this document? Speak to a lawyer. Electronic KYC is the same thing, electronic VOI and identity management, speak to a
Yeah.
lawyer. It shouldn't be that hard. It should be logical.
Do you think there's a fear with small businesses that actually like pick up the phone, talking to the law firm to sort of to ask a question? They're thinking, oh, the clock's going to start, and but there's this fear of talking to lawyers. I only talk to a lawyer when I'm in big deep trouble.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a fear. They'll say, "Oh, that'll cost me thousands of dollars," but most lawyers don't charge thousands of dollars for the first hour. It's
Mhm.
not like you're taking on days and days and days worth of advice. You've got a good relationship. You should have a good relationship with a local lawyer.
Mhm.
They should understand your business already. But if they don't, they should take the time to understand it, and then they can provide you some advice. And you can just take that advice and react accordingly, or you might take that advice further and say, what, can you help me with these employment contracts, or can you help me with this and that? Lawyers have great websites these days. It's very easy to figure out local lawyers, whether they've got, whether they're employment lawyers or if they're just property. It's very easy to figure out what skills they've got. So calling them up, getting them to understand your business and asking them for advice, I think even if you were paying thousands, it's probably worthwhile for your
Yeah,
business, because this thing's not just going to disappear, is it?
that's
We
right.
This is something that we're living with, and I just feel that especially in this mid-pandemic world of misinformation that we live in,
Mhm.
that the lawyers of Australia are critical instruments to stop that misinformation.
Yeah, no, interesting point. I mean, law firms, when they look at promoting themselves, there's different market activities they might undertake and things. But I mean, we talked the other day, we had a really interesting conversation the other day, which has led to this conversation, which is around taking a leadership position versus marketing.
Yeah, the conversation was a funny one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I went to my daughter's induction for high school, and as part of that, I found myself with my daughter in a presentation around digital citizenship,
yeah,
and which I found really interesting. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting there with my 12-year-old daughter talking about online speech and the law,
yeah.
and defamation and distribution of personal recordings, online speech, online speech considerations, and cyberbullying. It's some pretty heavy
Wow.
content.
Yeah.
I saw a teacher trying to navigate this discussion, and I wondered how much legal information was actually in that presentation. I don't mean that we need lawyers and very, very technical terms to be put in front of our children, but I do think that when it comes to digital citizenship, that yeah, the legal profession can help our education system better navigate digital citizenship. And it really got me thinking at the time that the content that was presented could have been better presented and had a better legal basis. So yeah, it was an interesting thing to be discussing with my daughter. And she again asked me, David, well, what do you think? And I keep reminding her, yeah, look, I work for a legal tech company, but I've got a technology background. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It's definitely, there are plenty of opportunities for lawyers to lead society, especially in important matters. And I think, during this pandemic, we've figured out that there are a lot of opportunities for lawyers to be really on the front foot. I know that there are a lot of businesses right now trying to navigate lockdowns.
Yeah,
You'd be the same, David. The lockdown rules change in every state every day.
absolutely. Yeah,
And what do we do? What does that mean for our people? We're fortunate that we have a law firm that we can just call up, or actually they're more proactive than that. Will send us an email update, just letting us know what we need to change in which state. And that's a big help to our business. This is not going to just disappear. We're not going to be in a situation in months from now where we just don't have to care anymore.
mm.
This is going to be an on and off thing for a while, I think, and so it's an opportunity, I think, for law firms to get on the front foot and to take a leadership position.
It's interesting. So I often think to myself, if a law firm offered me almost like a monthly subscription fee, and they actually incorporated in there, I could have my key documents, leases, all the other documents as well, access to information. You could put calls through, so you could actually ask questions and things like. You look and go to yourself like that. That to me, it just feels natural. It feels like something that I'd just, part of what I pay as business cost.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing to do.
Yeah, and that's the relationship they have with their accountants, right? So
Yeah,
it seems to be that the accountants call up, okay, it's time to do your BAS, let's go.
yeah, that's right.
Why don't we have that with law firms? And I think you're right. And definitely, I don't think small to medium businesses lean on the legal industry enough.
I mean, if I guess from your sort of coverage of law firms, I mean, what sort of practical things could they do to actually just engage with their clients better
Well,
and,
I
and take
think,
that leadership position?
well, I mean, look, the accounting industry, again, they take the time to understand their business. They proactively call them, and I think we've always said that the legal industry is not the best at business development, right? But maybe it's time to change. Proactively sending emails out to your clients to say, are you having trouble navigating these lockdowns? Call us for advice.
Yeah,
Would be a good thing to do. And some are. Some of the law firms I've spoken to are doing this, and it is providing them business. Other law firms are saying, well, and they're right, we're still trying to figure out what the laws mean. And the communication from the government is never black and white. It's never crystal clear.
yeah,
But they're definitely, the legal profession is the most skilled and equipped to interpret the changes to the laws and what they mean. I think what's happening right now, David, unfortunately, is that small to medium businesses are navigating lockdowns, possibly illegally in
yeah,
some respects. They're just saying, well, I'm not sure what to do, so I'm just going to do this, and
mm,
if I get a fine, I'll deal with that then. That's when
mm,
I'll call a lawyer. But you don't call a lawyer halfway through a divorce, right? Family law has actually boomed through the pandemic.
yeah,
And what I speak to lawyers about who use our family law products is exactly that, is that often they're engaged quite late in the process.
yeah,
They've been going through difficulties for some time. Now we're going through the divorce. Now I'll engage a lawyer. But actually, you should probably engage a lawyer a little bit sooner than that and sort of find out, get a full understanding of assets and understand the process and what you're
yeah.
going to go through. I think, that's probably money well spent.
Oh no, definitely. Definitely. I mean, even particularly in the US, a lot where you've got sort of like before you even get together and things, at inception of the marriage.
Yeah,
Um,
the prenup process, and
yeah,
the court filing market is changing too. So electronic court filing is obviously on the rise, and I think the US market has proven that during lockdowns that electronic filing still works, and it's quite resilient. Australia is certainly moving to towards full electronic filing in each court. And I think a lot of our products are geared around electronic filing, and law firms that traditionally haven't embraced that technology are definitely embracing that technology now. And I think that's working quite well.
Yeah.
But again, it's about engaging the lawyer quite early. Even wills, estate and probate matters. We recently built a will register.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the will register, it's not just a will register, actually, it's quite an interesting product. We went to a lot of our law firm clients and we were speaking about this problem. And the problem actually arose that during the pandemic, two of our employees had it was actually their father pass away. And in both cases, they couldn't locate the will. And until it was too late, they'd paid for the funerals, and then eventually they did locate wills. And we spoke to law firms about this problem, and they said, look, it's really a records management problem, and that it's not just about having a will register, it's about understanding when a death notice comes out. We can't spend all of our time reading papers, understanding when our clients have passed away. We're holding thousands and thousands and thousands of wills, and it's a real records management nightmare. My local lawyer, again, I went and saw him. He's got a safe where he stores wills, and he's got wills in there for people that are 120 years old. We thought to ourselves, could we build a product and provide it out to the law firms that they could register their wills, not the actual documents, but the fact that they're holding them. And then what we do is we give them alerts when any death notice matches their client, so that they can either act for their clients or update their records.
What I like about what you guys do is they're really, really practical, hands-on. They're just exactly, they just nail the problems down people have got. I mean, that's a great idea.
We just saw that as it's an administration thing, right?
Yeah.
Matching death notices to wills is admin, and we're firm believers on you can remove admin, right? You don't compete with your clients, but you remove administration burdens for them so that they've got more time to service their clients. And we just saw that as an admin thing, and we thought, well, let's go about fixing it. We don't charge for the product. It's integrated, and it's early days for the product, but it's growing really, really well.
So that's great. I mean, it's actually interesting. Just talking on the product front, I was talking to Garth Brown this week, and Garth, well known in the industry, and about I think it's the Secure Exchange product you guys have got, which is around. I mean, that was a really interesting story how that was created.
Yeah, no, we just saw a world of or total lack of security between real estate agents, buyers, sellers, and lawyers. So we created a product there to eradicate fraud initially for payment of deposits. So it's interesting that one of our directors actually was going through a property transaction. He alerted us to this. At first, the real estate agent called him up and said, listen, I'm going to need this deposit. And then somebody else from his firm with a totally different email address sent him an email and said, can you pay your deposit over here? Here's the bank account details. Ooh. And he thought to himself, wow, I've just met this real estate agent, and now I'm getting an email from someone else from this real estate agent. It's not even the same domain. I've never spoken to them before. They're asking for a large sum of money, and they're asking via email, and they've got bank account details there. And he just said, and this is a few years ago, there must be a better way. Now, the industry tried to navigate this problem, this email fraud problem, by all sorts of measures. It was quite funny. I had firms say to me, we PDF the bank account details because you can't hack a PDF, which is just crazy, right?
Wow.
Of course you can hack a PDF. Oh, well, we phone our clients and we give it to them, but it's somebody else from the office that you've never spoken before calling you up and saying, can you pay a large sum of money into this bank account? We just thought, no, there's a better technical way to do that. And so we built the Secure Exchange product and insured it initially just around securing those deposit funds. Everyone it was in the newspaper when settlement funds went missing, but it would never make the paper when deposit funds went missing. And we just saw that as a big problem. So we put that in place, and then the next logical evolution for the product was the contract.
Yeah.
And so now electronic contracts, whether or not you want to electronically sign them or wet sign them, it's all going through Secure Exchange. You can still print and sign if you wish, but most of the contracts now are being electronically signed as well.
Brilliant.
And the thing I love about electronically signing contracts is that is the transparency.
Yeah.
I love it because you can see the other party signed or not in
Yep.
real time. You go into the document, you see it there. You know, the lawyer knows it hasn't been tampered with. The document can't be tampered with once
Yep.
it's sent for signing, and it just creates this incredible transparency between the lawyer, the real estate agent, the buyer, and the seller. At the end of the day, what we're also trying to get rid of is the real estate agents running around in their cars at Saturday night at 10 p.m. to go and get a signature because somebody wasn't there.
Yeah.
We can get rid of all of that, provide a better service, and really in this world, that's what consumers want.
Well, it's a peace of mind as well, I guess. You just know that it's gone through risk-free and it just happens.
Yeah, and there's nothing risk-free, but wet signatures had their own,
Oh, yeah.
and countersigned contracts had their own issues. But it's certainly been an evolution for the industry and something that it's a technology provider like InfoTrack's job to continually improve this type of product. And not everybody's going to want to e-sign. You need something that works for both wet signatures and electronic signatures.
Yeah.
But we've got a long way to go. We're definitely on a mission at InfoTrack to reduce the admin and increase the transparency for property transactions in Australia.
Yep.
I think there's plenty of room to do that, and we're doing it in such a way that's inclusive. We're not, we don't see a world where real estate agents shouldn't exist or lawyers shouldn't exist. We believe that we can make a property transaction far more streamlined, far more efficient, with all of the players that exist in that process today still part of that process.
I've got a question for you around technology, John. I like to sort of gather opinions about things, and it relates to the old property technology and legal technology. Blockchain, how do you see that sort of playing in that sort of space?
Yeah, look, we have an innovation team at InfoTrack who built a blockchain for legal solution, and we've connected it to electronic contracts. We've done proof of concepts there. There's a bit of a technology hurdle, a security hurdle to establishing connection to that blockchain. I don't know if the benefits are there just now, David. I mean, I think there will be a day when banks, lawyers, real estate agents are all connected together.
Yeah.
And technology solutions like blockchain will make sense. But I also believe that day should also involve technology providers like InfoTrack simplifying blockchain so that lawyers don't have to understand blockchain.
Exactly. I mean, you guys are in a perfect position to actually onboard people onto the blockchain.
Problem with that would be you've got to make it inclusive. It's got to be entire industry. And I just think at this stage, where we need to focus on initially is just securing transactions between parties in the most inclusive way possible. Yeah. But I do believe that at some stage blockchain will underpin those technologies, but I don't see that happening in the next year or two. Mm-hmm. The end game for a lawyer in our industry is that it's far more streamlined. So the end game is that when they need to support somebody selling a property, that the interaction, the sort of onboarding requests to them is more streamlined. So a client interacts with them digitally. That means that they don't have to rekey in any information and they're able to start their processes. The interaction back to the client and the real estate agent is far more digital. Why? Well, we want to avoid the phone calls. Phone calls shouldn't be used for, where's my contract? Where's my contract? Phone calls should be used for legal advice, right? They should be chargeable advice items and their service, right? They should be reserved for providing a better service to client, not for the mundane, where's this, where's that? Where are we at with the process? Has it settled yet? All of that's got to go.
Yeah.
And the way to make it go is just a far more streamlined, transparent digital process, and not just for conveyancing, for court filing of any type, whether it be family law or otherwise, all interactions backwards and forwards with the client, digital and secure,
Yeah.
providing transparency for the client creates comfort.
Yeah.
Even the way you interact with the family court portal as an individual today, you get an email to find out that your ex-partner has filed an affidavit. You've still got to log into that court portal, try to navigate it, read a document, try to understand it, then call your lawyer and say, what does this mean? What are we going to do? The interaction's backwards, right?
Yeah.
The interaction should be you get a notification from your lawyer that says, hey, an affidavit's been filed. Here's how we're going to respond.
Perfect. That'd be perfect.
Yeah, and I think it's a far more proactive way of running a matter, and the law firm can actually, those family law firms are flat out at the moment. If they take the lead on the communication with the client, then they can schedule it in a lot better than being reactive and waiting for the phone calls.
It's interesting because I just on the topic of technology and efficiencies, what we're sort of seeing in Australia now is a real talent war. There are American firms, poaching Australian lawyers to do M&A and commercial law sort of matters. And I mean, the borders closed as they are right now. There's a real talent war sort of going on. So I guess people have got to look at technology as being a way to actually, get the extra, effectively do the work of people.
Where there is a talent war at the moment, there's a real shortage of skills in Australia. I mean, we did rely more than we thought on importing and immigration effectively. I know InfoTrack sponsored people. It's where we get some of our talent. Diversity is very important to a technology business, to any business. And so without any immigration, we've certainly are starved for talent in Australia. And I think, though, it does create an opportunity, right? And we are effectively exporting our knowledge and our technology, and we should be charging for that. It's very important to our economy that we improve our export potential, but it's putting some pressure on businesses in the meantime. If you're a software developer today that works on front end type technology, David, you're paid more than a CEO.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
Out of university, no skills, and the salaries are eye-watering. There's also a difference between those that have got technical skills and those that have got experience in an industry.
Yeah.
And one thing we've figured out, David, is that the legal technology industry is a unique industry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's the most discerning of technologists. Lawyers and conveyancers pretend they hate technology, but the truth is they just don't put up with anything short of excellent technology, are they?
Yep.
And so until you build something that is great, they just will not use it. And so you can't just be an average developer who's got some skills and knows how to cut some code. You really have to understand a client and their workflow and their client to build technology that works for them.
It's interesting because I guess you look at the pathways that lawyers, they go to law school. Do you think technology could be a pathway that that lawyers that are graduating could be actually pursuing or looking at?
Yeah, we've done some work with some universities around this. It's an interesting thing. I think sort of dual degrees, legal and tech, is starting to happen. I think what's happening more though, David, is especially in the larger law firms that they're taking an interest in technology, and they have their own hackathons and they provide their own technical training to anybody within the law firm who's interested in learning.
Yeah.
And that's definitely having an effect on the legal industry. So the larger law firms are seeing technology as a way of differentiating their business, and that sort of knowledge will disseminate through the legal industry over time. I definitely think, though, in a world where technology is just now par for the course, day to day, and evolving at the pace it's evolving, it's certainly accelerated over the last 12 months, that keeping up with that technology will be critically important to any business, but definitely our legal industry.
Yes, I've seen some law firms actually having their own consulting division, so client consulting divisions around technology and around legal tech or law tech solutions.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea. It's getting the technical skills in the business is a challenge, and then disseminating the information through the business and keeping it there, it's a good way of doing it. I applaud those law firms that are investing in building technical expertise in their people. It'll certainly help position them well for the future.
Yeah. John, on a personal note, and this is just something I think people always want to know about from personal productivity, from personal development standpoint. I mean, I guess what sort of resources do you lean on to actually help you? And what books, what sort of people do you follow? And what sort of resources do you actually look at?
Yeah, that's a good question, David. So books are a big thing for me, but I don't have a lot of time. I don't sit down and read books on weekends as much as I should.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the audio book concept. I do read books, but I tend to read two at the same time, and I'll do a chapter of each.
Yeah.
There's a book by the CEO of Microsoft called Hit Refresh, which is an interesting book I'm reading at the moment. The reason I was attracted to the book is what he termed as a refounder. I came across it from a podcast, and this podcast mentioned this whole concept of a refounder. You're not a founder of a business. You're not the person that invented it, but you're the person that's got to come along and sort of refound it, reinvent it again, and continue its growth and even accelerate its growth. And that's sort of the position I feel like I'm in, is that I've got to keep reinventing the business, and you can't sort of sit back and say, hey, we're doing very well in this industry. You've got to constantly disrupt yourself. You've got to constantly challenge yourself to do more and more. And that's what this book's about. Here's a new CEO that came into the business, into Microsoft. Bill Gates was there first, and then Balmer second. And here he came into the business. He'd been in the business for many years. He was lucky in that he knew the business backwards. At that particular point in time, Microsoft were not big on the cloud, and they weren't winning the cloud war. And it was a really big challenge for Microsoft to build themselves to be a primary cloud provider and not miss out on that industry. And it just talks about how he did that, and he really focuses on two things I'm passionate about, and everyone knows InfoTrack's passionate about, is culture's number one, and purpose is number two. We talk a lot about purpose at InfoTrack, David, and what do we mean by purpose? It's a really simple thing that everybody can use in every type of business, and that is, before you do anything, before any meeting, before you meet with anyone, ask yourself the question, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
What do I want out of this meeting today? Write it down and go and get it. And if you realize that you're in a meeting with no purpose, then don't be there.
Yep.
Unless there's a purpose, somebody's there to get something from you, but you should understand that before you agree to meet. And really just thinking to yourself every day, but what's my primary purpose? What do I want to achieve today? And getting that done, it gives you this incredible sense every day of achievement, of achieving a goal, albeit very small. But it really forces you to think that I'm only going to do things purposefully. I'm not going to accidentally do anything today. And I really like thinking about that. What it does is it dramatically changes your meeting schedule, gives you more time back, and it makes you feel a real sense of achievement at the end of every day.
That's a great tip, brilliant.
And the productivity tools, that I used to have a day with all of my new hires, David. So when we hired people, we'd have this day with the new starters, so every month. But that's turned into a Zoom call lunch now, where they get Uber Eats, and they get to eat, and I get to watch the meeting. And we talk to them about productivity tools that we use at InfoTrack. The number one productivity tool we use at InfoTrack is don't email me. Don't reply to a reply to a reply. Just don't do it. Just call.
Yep.
Use the instant message technology. We use Teams and Slack to send a message to someone to say, have you got a minute to talk?
Brilliant.
And so that's number one, is talk to people, create less email, create less work. The second thing we've done, which is quite an interesting one, is no email, no instant messages, no phone calls, and no meetings every day from 12:30 to 1:30.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Why? Because that's lunchtime. Now, we can't stop clients from calling at that time. So obviously, we've got a help desk that powers through that. They adjust their schedule accordingly. But I want the whole company to have lunch or go and do some exercise break their day in two. And it's such a relieving thing to go to lunch and know that nobody's going to be emailing or calling or sending you messages, because there's nothing worse than taking a bit of time off and coming back and seeing a list of emails there. Yeah. And the same thing with out of hours. I like to do a bit of work before going to bed just to get things off my mind, but I'll delay sending emails until the next morning. So don't email me late at night. Don't create work out of hours for people. It's just disrespectful. So they're good productivity enhancers. And then the other productivity tip I give them, David, is colorize your email. So when you send me an email, if I'm in the to field, it comes up in my email in red. So I see that and I go, oh, somebody sent an email directly to me. I need to read that first. And if you CC me, it's blue. Yep. And if you don't do either, I'm just on a list, then it's black. And so when I come to my email, if I do have a list, I read the red ones first, the blue ones second, and if I have time, the black ones.
I would. I mean, the amount of time we spend on emails is just crazy.
It is, yeah. And if you can change your business so that you rely less on email, it's a far more efficient business.
Yeah, definitely. John, absolutely amazing talking today. I mean, as always, great to chat. You guys at InfoTrack doing an amazing job with the products you're putting out there, and I know a lot of team members there, great people, do some fantastic things. So really appreciate your time as always.
Thanks very much, mate. It's always good to meet. Yeah, we do. We try very hard at InfoTrack, and we just love building products that remove admin. That's at the end of the day what we're trying to do. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure.